History remembers her as a poisoner, a manipulator, a foreign witch who corrupted the throne of France. History was written by the men she outwitted. Her name was Catherine de Medici, and before she became the most feared woman in Europe, she was a child who had lost everything. Florence, 1520. She enters the world already a casualty. Her mother, Madeleine de la Tour d'Auvergne, dies within days of her birth, consumed by fever. Her father, Lorenzo II de Medici, heir to the greatest banking dynasty in Christendom, follows her into death just weeks later. Catherine is not yet 1 month old. She has already been made an orphan. She has passed between relatives like an inconvenience. Briefly to the Medici Pope Clement VII, her cousin, then to Florence, where she becomes something extraordinary and terrible, a political asset in a city that runs on blood and calculation. The Florentines call her La Piccola Duchessina, the Little Duchess. They say it tenderly. But the tenderness is a mask. Even at 5 years old, Catherine de Medici is a chess piece. She is 7 years old when the world collapses. The Holy Roman Emperor Charles V, furious at Pope Clement for his political maneuvers, unleashes his armies on Rome. The sack of Rome is not a battle, it is a desecration. Thousands die. The Pope is imprisoned. In Florence, the citizens see their chance. The Medici have ruled this city for generations, and the city is sick of it. Rebels seize control, and they take something very specific as their hostage. Catherine. She is placed in the convent of Santa Lucia, then the convent of the Murat. She is to be kept safe, which means controlled. Around her, the streets ring with violence. There are genuine threats against her life. Some rebels debate using her as a human shield on the walls of Florence. Others propose something worse. She hears all of it. She is 8 years old, alone in a cell, and she learns the first great lesson of her life. The world will not protect you. You must construct your own protection, quietly, invisibly, and without flinching. Florence eventually falls back under Medici control. Catherine is retrieved by her cousin the Pope, not from love, but from strategy. She is the last legitimate Medici heir. And she has a purpose. She is to be married. The year is 1533. Catherine is 13 years old. Pope Clement has arranged her marriage to Henry of Orleans, the second son of King Francis I of France. On paper, it is a triumph. In reality, it is an exile. The French court barely conceals its contempt. Catherine is Italian, foreign. She is a merchant's daughter elevated by papal politics, not by blood. The French aristocracy, with centuries of noble lineage stitched into their crests, look at this dark-eyed girl and see a shopkeeper's granddaughter. She is called the Italian woman. It is not a compliment, it is a category, a box to keep her in. She arrives in Marseille in October 1533, carried in a gilded procession. She wears Florentine fashions that the French find ostentatious. She brings with her Florentine cooks, Florentine musicians, Florentine perfumers, innovations the French court will quietly adopt and later claim as their own. But that reckoning is decades away. Tonight there is only the scrutiny. She smiles. She keeps smiling. She has learned to make her face a door that no one can open. Henry of Orleans, her husband. He is 14 years old. He is not unkind. He is simply absent. Not from the marriage, he is physically present. He is absent in the way of someone whose emotional life has been claimed entirely by another. That other is Diane de Poitiers. Diane de Poitiers is 35 when Henry and Catherine marry. She has been Henry's companion, his confidante, his mentor, his everything since he was a traumatized boy of 10, returned broken from 3 years as a hostage in Spain. She found him shattered. She rebuilt him in her image. She is his mirror, his armor, his obsession. She is also the woman who will humiliate Catherine de Medici for the next 15 years. The wedding night is conducted, as was the custom of the time, under the watchful eyes of witnesses. King Francis himself reportedly observes to ensure the consummation is legitimate. It is the specific, institutional exposure of intimacy as political transaction. Catherine endures it. She has no other option. What she cannot endure, or rather what she endures and does not forget, is what follows. Henry rises from the marriage bed, dresses with the focused efficiency of a man with somewhere more important to be, and departs. To Diane. This is not a one-night slight. This is the architecture of her humiliation. Henry wears Diane's colours at tournaments. He engraves their intertwined initials, H and D, on the walls of his palaces. He gives Diane the crown jewels. He allows her, publicly, to receive more honours than his own wife. Catherine must watch. Catherine must smile. Catherine must perform gratitude for the scraps of formal recognition she receives. And in the silence of her private rooms, Catherine begins to write. The diaries are not known to most historians as weapons. They read them as private grief. But grief kept in cipher, grief that catalogues slights with the precision of a ledger, that is not mere feeling. That is evidence. That is preparation. Every public humiliation is recorded. Every alliance Diane has consolidated. Every noble who snickers at the Italian woman behind their fans. Catherine writes it all down, in her dark, cramped hand, by the light of a single candle, in a room where no one thinks to look. For 10 years, Catherine does not produce an heir. 10 years. In the 16th century, a queen who cannot give the king a son is not simply a disappointment. She is a liability. She is grounds for annulment. She is, in the brutal economy of royal marriage, a failed investment. The whispers grow louder. Divorce. Annulment. Send her back to Florence. Find the prince a proper French wife. The Italian woman is barren. She goes to the court physician, Jean Fernel, a man of genuine learning in an age of superstition. Together they diagnose what they can. Fernel adjusts. Remedies are applied. The science is crude, but the intention is serious. Catherine submits to every recommendation with the dogged intensity of someone who understands exactly what failure means. She also, it is said, consults other sources. Astrologers, alchemists, women who operate in the shadows of the official court, the ones who know herbal preparations that physicians refuse to acknowledge. Catherine is not superstitious. She is methodical. She will use every tool available, and she keeps writing. While Catherine endures her decade of barrenness, Diane de Poitiers moves with the confidence of a woman who believes she has already won. She advises Henry on state matters. She controls access to the king, which means she controls patronage, which means she controls everything that matters at the French court. Her signature appears alongside Henry's on official documents. She receives ambassadors. She is, in every functional sense, the queen. She is also, and this detail matters, meticulously kind to Catherine in public. Not warm, kind. Performed, tactical kindness, the sort that makes the recipient feel the humiliation more sharply, because there is nothing to protest, no visible cruelty, just the constant, suffocating reminder of who holds the power. There is a story, and stories from this court are difficult to fully verify, filtered as they are through hostile sources and later political myth-making, but there is a story that Catherine had a hole bored in the floor above Diane's apartments, that she lay on the cold stone and watched through it, in silence, learning what the world looked like from the other side of the door. Whether or not it is literally true, it is psychologically precise. Catherine de Medici survived these years by seeing everything. Absolute, unflinching observation, making herself invisible so she could see clearly. She was building a map. In 1536, the unthinkable happens. Francis, the Dauphin, Henry's older brother, the heir to the French throne, dies suddenly. He is 18. He had been playing tennis. He drank a glass of cold water. He was dead within days. The court explodes with accusations. Poison. An Italian plot. The blame lands, with vicious convenience, on a Florentine in the royal household. He is executed, horribly, by being drawn and quartered before a crowd in Lyon. The whispers reach Catherine. She is Italian. She is Medici. The poisoners. The calculators. In the grief and the paranoia, the Italian woman's foreignness thickens around her like fog. But here is what the court does not understand, what it will not understand until it is far too late. Henry of Orleans is now the Dauphin. He will be king, and Catherine will be queen. In 1544, the dam breaks. Catherine gives birth to her first child, Francis. Then another, ultimately 10 children. The barren Italian woman produces an entire dynasty, and with each birth, something shifts in the court's calculation. Catherine is no longer a temporary inconvenience. She is the permanent architecture of the French royal line. Every noble who will one day want something from her children must now attend to her. She has been waiting for this. She has been watching for 11 years. She knows every alliance, every debt, every secret ambition in this court. She has it all written down in her ciphered hand. Now she begins to spend it. King Francis I dies in 1547. Henry becomes Henry II, King of France. Catherine is queen, in name. Diane de Poitiers is at the coronation. She wears the crown jewels, the ones that rightfully belong to Catherine. Henry has given them to her. It is perhaps the most deliberate public humiliation yet. The court watches to see how Catherine will respond. What Catherine does over the next decade is not visible in the grand historical record. It happens in corridors, in letters, in the careful cultivation of relationships that others dismiss as mere court gossip. She builds what historians would later call her flying squadron, a network of extraordinarily beautiful, extraordinarily intelligent ladies in waiting who serve as her intelligence operatives. They are not spies in the crude sense. They are readers, listeners, women trained to observe and report, to cultivate relationships with powerful men and extract information through the channels that polite society pretends don't exist. It is, by any honest measure, a masterwork of information warfare, and it is almost entirely invisible to the men who are its subject. They see beautiful women, they see decoration, they do not see the network. Catherine does. She employs Nostradamus, not, as later legend insists, for prophecy in the mystical sense. Catherine is not a mystic. She is an empiricist born into an age that hasn't quite invented empiricism yet. She uses the astrologer-physicians of her time as her era's version of intelligence analysts. Men trained to observe patterns, to calculate probabilities, to advise on timing. She asks about her children's futures. She asks about her enemies' vulnerabilities. She asks about the health of kings. She is always asking about the health of kings. June 1559. A tournament to celebrate the peace of Cateau-Cambresis. Henry II is 40 years old, in his prime, vigorous, invincible. He enters the lists bearing Diane's colours, as he has done for decades. Catherine watches from the royal box, as she has done for decades. He faces Gabriel de Montgomery, a captain of the Scottish Guard. The joust goes wrong. Montgomery's lance splinters at the visor. Fragments pierce the king's eye. Henry II does not die immediately. He lingers for 10 agonizing days. The royal physicians, including the great Andreas Vesalius, summoned from Brussels, unable to save him. He dies on July 10th. And Catherine de Medici becomes the most powerful woman in France. She is 40 years old. She has spent 26 years waiting. Her first act is instructive. Before the king's body is cold, Catherine sends a delegation to Annette, Diane's magnificent chateau, built with royal funds, decorated with royal jewels. The message is precise and without cruelty. The crown jewels, please, and the chateau of Chenonceau. They belong to France. Diane de Poitiers, who has wielded total power for a generation, who has never had to answer to Catherine for anything, returns them. Catherine does not gloat. She never gloats. Gloating is for people who are not yet sure they've won. She simply sends Diane to a smaller estate and never acknowledges her again. 15 years of public humiliation. And this is the revenge, not pain. Erasure. Her son Francis II is 15 years old and unwell. He will be king for less than 2 years before illness takes him. Catherine assumes the regency. Then her second son, Charles IX, 10 years old, becomes king. Catherine governs. Now the court sees what she actually is. Not a decoration, not a foreign inconvenience, a ruler. Her methods are exactly what you would expect of a woman educated by 26 years of enforced observation. She governs through information, through access, through the careful management of factions, playing the Protestant Huguenots against the Catholic Guy's family, never allowing either to gain enough ground to challenge the crown. It is exhausting, perpetual, brilliant diplomacy. The men who once snickered at the Italian woman find themselves dependent on her. She remembers every one of them. The legend of Catherine the Poisoner begins here, in the overheated imagination of her political enemies. The truth is more interesting. Catherine does maintain a private laboratory. She is genuinely expert in substances, their properties, their effects, their applications. This was not unusual for a woman of her education and era. Apothecary knowledge was considered appropriate for aristocratic women. But Catherine's interest goes further. She maintains relationships with physicians and alchemists that are beyond the merely decorative. Did she poison enemies? The historical record is, as it always is in these matters, aggressively ambiguous. Several inconvenient people die at convenient moments. Several of those people are Catherine's enemies. Circumstantial, always circumstantial. But here is what is not ambiguous: the knowledge and the reputation, and the way the reputation operates as its own kind of weapon. You do not need to poison a man if he is already afraid you might. Catherine knows this. She has always known this. The St. Bartholomew's Day massacre is the black mark. The event that makes Catherine de Medici, in the popular imagination, irredeemable. Thousands of Huguenots are killed in Paris and across France. The political origins are complex: a failed assassination attempt on Huguenot leader Admiral Coligny, and Catherine's fear that the incident would provoke war. Her decision to strike preemptively spirals catastrophically out of her control. This is not the Catherine of cool calculation. This is the Catherine of fear, a woman who has spent decades building a careful balance, watching it wobble and grasping too hard in the wrong direction. She will spend the rest of her life living with it. The popes celebrate, the Protestants name her the new Jezebel. Elizabeth I of England receives the French ambassador in mourning clothes. Catherine says nothing that is recorded, but she keeps governing. She keeps working. She keeps writing. She outlives 4 of her 10 children. She outlives Diane de Poitiers by 14 years. She outlives the version of herself that France thought it knew: the foreign bride, the barren queen, the poisoner. She governs, advises, maneuvers, writes letters. Her enemies called her a poisoner because they needed a simple explanation for how a woman had outmaneuvered them all. The truth was both simpler and more devastating. She paid attention. For decades, while they were busy performing their power, she was studying it. She did not survive the court of France in spite of her trauma. She survived because of what her trauma taught her. That the world will not protect you, that you must see everything, that you must wait and write it down and wait some more. That the most dangerous thing in any room is not the man with the sword, it is the woman in the corner who has been watching him for 30 years.